tasks. Okay, so we are now recording. Let me also share my screen. I was going to say briefly, but it won't be briefly this time. Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining, especially any of you who are new to the call. Most welcome if you are. As the slide you can hopefully see would suggest, we're going to talk today not about the finer details of the rules of cricket, as we were discussing just before I started recording, but in fact the agenda of the forthcoming IETF meeting, IETF 123. And then, time permitting, we talk about some of the recent news headlines, etc. And thanks, as always, to DNS for sponsoring the call. Their long-term support is very much appreciated. Okay, so let's get on to the IETF agenda. As a reminder, the meeting overall starts this coming Saturday the 19th and runs through to the following Friday the 25th in Madrid. It kicks off with a hackathon on Saturday and Sunday. There's sort of a new participants day throughout Sunday, and I'll come on to all these a bit more detail in a minute. And then the meeting proper, there's a welcome reception on the Sunday evening, and then that really sort of begins in earnest on the Monday. It's at the Emilia Castilla Hotel and Convention Centre. And I believe, anyone will correct me if I'm wrong, that the all of the sort of pre-booked sort of accommodation there is full. So anyone who's yet to make a hotel booking would need to stay somewhere, hopefully nearby. Being mindful that the temperatures a couple or so weeks ago peaked at about 45 degrees. I think they're slightly cooler at the moment. When I checked my phone this morning, it was suggesting early next week 37, 38 degrees was possible. So you wouldn't want to have a long commute, ideally. But so do bear that in mind. Also, when I checked at lunchtime today, UK time, just over 1,400 people were registered in total, just over 1,000 on site, and just under 670 remote. And I'm sure that will have sort of ticked up slightly in the interim. So do bear that in mind. Okay, so let's look at the agenda. What I'm going to do, just to explain, I'm going to run through the agenda from start to finish. Firstly, concentrating on the working groups and research groups, and then pulling out at the end some of the side meetings. As I go through, if anyone has also had an opportunity to take a look at the agenda, feels like I've missed anything important, please sort of interrupt me and say so, and sort of highlight what else you think would be sort of worth people's time and attention. You'll also see as I go through, not for the Sunday, but for other days of the week, I will highlight some things where there are some obvious diary sort of clashes, time clashes. So it wouldn't be feasible to see or to attend all of these things simultaneously. So I'm highlighting things which look interesting to me, and where possible I'll give you some reasons why. And then obviously it's an exercise for the reader to determine which of those you're especially interested in joining. Okay, so without further ado, firstly, just highlighting on the Sunday, in addition to the results of the hackathon being presented between 2 and 4 p.m. local time, you'll also see some things highlighted in a sort of pinky colour on my screen. Those are items for new participants taking place throughout the day. So if you're relatively new to the IETF and you're in Madrid on Sunday, those will be well worth your while joining. There's no additional cost, as far as I'm aware, to any of these. Although for the new participants program lunch at 12:30 to 1:30 local time, you'll see you do need to at least pre-register for that. Although, as I say, I don't think there's any cost involved. It's just to help with the administration of numbers, etc. So there's various things for new participants which might be useful if you're new or relatively new to the IETF. Also on the Sunday is the IEPG, which meets, it's not part of the IETF, it meets Sunday morning by tradition between 10 and 12. And usually sort of covers relatively operational sort of topics that people want to give presentations on. So it's a relatively relaxed introduction to the IETF program, just to get your sort of head in gear a bit for the procedures for the rest of the week. Well, technically it sits outside of the IEPG. Tom, you have your hand raised.
As a complete newbie to this, and also a newbie who's daft enough to have not realised that Sunday was Newbies Day, and as such is going to miss Sunday. But anyway, that's just me being an idiot. What's an IEPG?
That's a jolly good question, and I was hoping no one would answer that because I couldn't even instantly remember. But if you bear with me, I will take.
It's the Internet Engineering Planning Group.
Planning group. That was it. I couldn't think what the P stood for. Thank you.
But the title of it doesn't really mean anything of what it actually does.
I mean, to all intents and purposes, it talks about relatively operational stuff of interest. Typically, I've not seen the program for this time around, but typically there's a handful of presentations, usually quite interesting things. So a few meetings ago, my good friend Jeff Houston gave a presentation, which my interpretation was that we should deprecate IPv6. Which caused a stir when I made that observation at the microphone. But yeah, I mean, there's relatively interesting presentations normally. So if you're in Madrid on Sunday morning, that's a good thing to go to. I presume remote access is available as well.
It almost always has at least one talk on DNS in there.
Yes, that's also true. Yeah, pretty standard to have that. Ordinarily, Warren Kamari is one of the co-chairs. I'm not sure if he's going to do it this year because obviously he's recently been elevated to the Internet Architecture Board, sort of moving him on from his long-standing role as one of the ops area account directors. So I'm not sure if he's passed on the baton for that or not, but yeah, it's normally an interesting sort of set of topics, so worth going to if you're able. And I can see in the chat, Michael's helpfully pointed out that various of the sessions for the new participants are recorded. Not 100% sure whether there's remote access available. So if you happen to be able to join remotely, Tom, you may possibly be able to participate in some of those, even if you're not in Madrid till the Monday. So that might be worth it. We can check it out afterwards.
I think you can, Andrew. I think some of those sessions are available remotely.
Okay, excellent. I'm being slightly hesitant on that because they were only introduced at the last meeting, so I've not had first-hand experience of them. So thanks, Carl. That's useful if you can do that. And then for everyone else, non-new participants, if you've arrived at some point through Sunday, the welcome reception sort of takes place as is tradition at 5 p.m. through to roughly 7 p.m. Because there's not a local host sponsoring it, it's a cash bar, so do bear that in mind. It's not free drinks for the welcome reception. And also sort of slightly overlapping. You'll see the hot RFC lightning talks run between 6 and 8. And essentially anyone can ask for I think it's a 4-minute slot to present on within reason any topic. And it's a good opportunity to highlight things that you're thinking about to see if other people have similar interests and might want to sort of catch up with you through the week to sort of talk about them further. Certainly I've used it in the past to highlight a side meeting later in the week as well for similar reasons. So that's quite a good thing typically to drift from the welcome reception to. They're usually close by with a beer in hand to listen to some fairly sort of punchy, as I say, 4-minute presentations on a sort of broad cross-section of topics. Okay, and then we move into the sort of the mechanics of the meeting itself. For the rest of the week, there are 4 sessions a day, 2 prior to lunch and 2 after lunch. That's breaking with sort of standard practice for the IETF meetings, because normally it's 1 before lunch and 3 after. But that's to make allowance for the fact that sort of lunchtime is typically later in Spain and elsewhere in southern Europe, so it will be a bit ridiculous to have 1 session before local lunchtime, or equally break for lunch and there's nowhere locally open for lunch, which would also be a problem. So it's relatively early for lunch locally, but it's doable to break at 1 o'clock. And at any given time, there's usually 8 parallel sessions, as you can see. So session 1, you've got starts with dispatch at the top there, running through to interdomain routing. They're all running in parallel. So this is where you need to start to make choices. The 2 things that I've highlighted, there's a dispatch session, which covers the ArtSec and WIT areas. But in parallel with that, there's the DELEG working group. There were too many topics being covered in the dispatch session for me to list helpfully on a slide. But if you go to the agenda page and click on dispatch, it will throw up the list of sessions. DELEG, on the other hand, I've sort of, as you can see, put just slightly to the side the main things, and with some of these I've been a bit selective. There's sort of discussion on the base protocol, and then an additional discussion looking at the potential to allocate a range of authoritative delegation types. And as we go through the rest of the week, you'll see, again, I've pulled out sort of things from the agendas of those working group sessions which look interesting to me. So I'll probably go to DELEG since I have a bias towards DNS-related stuff, but if that's not your thing, then dispatch will probably be quite a useful thing to go along to, as it will cover a fairly broad range of topics in the allotted 2 hours. And there will generally be things which are sort of potential new business for the IETF, where people are giving short presentations, and the objective is to determine where they should be worked on, if at all. The answer would be not here, thank you. But so it's a good way to get early sight of stuff that may join the agenda of a working group potentially in the future. Just seeing it in the chat, I should have said actually for new participants, by the way, that the accepted definition is anyone that has been to sort of 5 or less meetings. So anything that's flagged as for new participants, I mean, there's no hard and fast rule, but usually if it's up to your 5th session, it's not normally a problem to go along, even if some of it might be a bit repetitive, depending on what it is. Okay, moving on. Monday, session 2, which is, so session 1 was 2 hours, session 2 is an hour, so slightly more punchy. The only thing that's jumped out to me is the first of 2 sessions of the DNS operations working group. if I'm honest, mainly because I'm especially interested in seeing how structured error data for filtered DNS is progressing. But as you can see, there's other topics being discussed, including IPv6 transport operational guidelines for the DNS and domain control validation using DNS. And as is common with most of the business or much of the business, the working groups, there will be drafts which it's useful to have at least glanced at in advance of the meeting if you're planning to go along. A question in the chat, is it acceptable just to rock up to a session and sit at the back? Absolutely, yes, it definitely is. We were all new participants once, so if you don't do that, you'll never get to grips with stuff. And to be honest, that's the main advantage, Tom, of being in person. So you'll have normally a list of things you absolutely want to go to, and there may be some gaps in your schedule. That sort of serendipitous chance on something that's also of interest is one of the major benefits of turning up. You don't have to go to the mic to confirm to everyone else your lack of knowledge of a topic. You can just sit and listen if that's or what you want to do. But as Tommy has put in the chat, if you do have a question or comment, you can absolutely do that as well. Just to liven things up. Okay, moving on to sort of Monday sort of sessions 3 and 4. I've highlighted the first of the birds of a feather sessions. So this is new business that's been allocated a longer slot outside of the dispatch sessions, where it's to determine whether it should ultimately become a working group. As you can see, there's a TLS exported attestation is the first. I think there are 4 BOFs in total through the week, which is a post handshake exchange for TLS for some specific use cases. You can see a little bit more detail on the screen, which I won't read out loud, and there's rather more detail than that accessible on the IETF data tracker. So that's it's quite interesting, and it's early days for that. Anything that's flagged as a BOF is sort of relatively new discussion. So again, that's quite a good topic for if you're a new participant to sort of sit in on, as it's not like it's been something that's going for 10 years and everyone else knows everything about it. So you'll have no major disadvantage in joining those. AI Preferences has been a very active mailing list, but they haven't yet got a published agenda, so I haven't listed anything for that. And there's a few others like that you'll see as we go through the agenda, where I can't tell you what's on the agenda, but I think it will be interesting. Sort of based on sort of ongoing discussions, but the chairs are slightly late in putting the details of the agenda on Data Tracker. And then in Monday session 4, the decentralization of the internet, that's one of the research groups, so part of the IETF. That's, as the name implies, it's sort of doing research into the sort of centralization of or how to stop the centralization of the internet. But again, there's not a published agenda yet, but it is usually very interesting. There's another research group, HRPC, Human Rights Protocol Considerations, which unusually has already got an agenda published. They normally don't publish them until some point next week. And they got a series of two main presentations. Maria Farrell about why we need to rewild the internet, followed by Chantel Joris on techno-legal frameworks applicable in armed conflict. If you went to the RIPE meeting a short while ago, you would have heard Maria's presentation, so I think it will be largely a reprise of that. I've not heard Chantel's presentation, although there have been discussions in DM about the sort of humanitarian law and conflict. So I imagine it will cover similar ground, but perhaps in a more focused way. And then the second of the BOFs, the Web BOP a bot auth working group, and it's proposing to standardize cryptographically authenticating non-browser clients and their operators to websites. And as you can see, it's intended mainly for use by sites that primarily serve browsers. So that's the second of the BOF sessions for the week. So there's 3 things potentially of interest to me, at least, in session 4. So we'll have to make my decision in due course. Depending on the agenda, you'll probably find me in the DNRG session, but we'll have to wait and see what's on the agenda first to confirm that. Bottom of the screen, you'll see there's a new participants dinner on Monday evening, which you do need to have registered for, and there's a $15 US dollar charge for that. So if you're new up to sort of 5 meetings, you want to go along to that to just meet up with some other sort of people new to the IETF, then that's definitely worthwhile. I see Ruth Lostom has refound the shared screen, so hopefully it's working. Okay. Moving on to Tuesday, I've highlighted, see ACM IRTF, that's Applied Networking Research Workshops. There's a series of those sort of through Tuesday. So they're quite content rich. So do bear that in mind, but certainly worth going along. So there'll be a series of presentations in each of those on different topics. Also Tuesday, session 1, SPICE is meeting, that secure patterns for internet credentials. So that's basically a way of sharing credentials with another party, but without disclosing more than you need to. So for example, confirming that you are indeed over 18 without disclosing your actual age, date of birth, etc. And it's potentially going to be used by the European digital ID, amongst other things. That was one of the drivers for it being added to the IETF program when it kicked off about 2 years ago. And then in session 2, you've got the sort of second of the, I think, 4 applied networking research workshops, sort of covering a new series of topics, as well as the post-quantum use in protocols working group, also covering a range of topics. I'm not sure, I may have put the arrow to the sort of PQIP, and that should go to the ANRW workshop. I'll check that before I share the slides post meeting. Okay, session 3 on Tuesday again. Some more of the ANRW content. You'll see towards the top of the screen, but also at the same time, the SCOAN working group is meeting, which is intended to be a way that networks can communicate to applications if there are some bandwidth limitations, and then the applications can optionally decide if they want to take note of that communication, and that's ongoing work that's continuing. And then similarly in session 4, again, this is the last, I think, of the ANRW sessions. I'm covering, amongst other things, Anycast, comparing 2 different approaches, and also post-quantum cryptography in DNSSEC, which I think that presentation or that topic certainly was covered also at the last RIPE meeting from memory. I think that did take a look at the Falcon signatures, amongst other things. Also at the same time, you got the DM Digital Emblems working group is meeting formally as a working group for the first time. It was a side meeting at the meeting in Bangkok. So that's looking at how to have a sort of a digital version of this sort of red cross or red crescent on a site, so that in the event of warfare, any attackers know that if they attack a site with that digital emblem, there would be a war crime, and they hopefully would desist. And also the TLS working group is meeting, I think that's the first of 2 sessions it has through the week. Neither DM nor TLS working group have got agendas yet, well they didn't when I looked about an hour ago, so that's the reason why they're not listed there. And then finally on Tuesday evening, I think in the hotel there'll be a board game night in lieu of a social event off-site. So if that's your thing, you can play board games. If not, then join our WhatsApp group, and you'll find out where others of us are going off-site to socialise. Hopefully somewhere air conditioned, so you can certainly do that if you so desire. Moving on to Wednesday, you'll see I've highlighted moderation procedures as working group top of the screen. That's looking at some of the IETF internal procedures that have to moderate mailing lists, etc., and other behaviours. Again, no published agenda for that, so I can't give you any more details. The measurement and analysis for protocols research group is meeting, and I put some details there linked to sort of web crawlers and other sort of web indexing and other related matters. Interesting to see that's sort of been picked up by MapRG as a topic. And also, disappointingly, another research group, RASP research group, research analysis of standard setting processes research group, is meeting at the same time. And again, I listed some of the topics for conversation there. It's a series of presentations looking at the interdependence of the US and China economies, the AT protocol as used by Blue Sky and others, and sort of African participation in the IETF, amongst other things. So a series of presentations in that one. So probably at the moment you might well find me in MapRG, but I'll see what the agenda is for ModPod. And then in the afternoon, the only thing that really appealed to me in session 2 was the IB Open meeting, which amongst other things will talk about the forthcoming age verification workshop, as well as a forthcoming workshop on IP geolocation, but I'm particularly interested in the age verification one, and also liaison coordination updates with other standards bodies. So you would definitely find me in that session. And again, interrupt me or raise your virtual hand or just unmute and talk if you want to interject with other things that you think I've overlooked or have oversimplified as I run through this. In the meantime, though, moving on, other things I've highlighted on Wednesday, session 3. The only thing that jumped out at me was Privacy Pass working group. Again, pulled out from the agenda, is going to look at some proposed enhancements and also anonymous credit tokens, amongst other things. And then session 4, we've got the ADD, Adaptive DNS Discovery working group, which cover a range of stuff, including, I think there's a sort of new presentation, possibly by Tommy Jensen. That might be misremembering Tommy. Handling encrypted DNS server redirection. Certainly someone's presenting that. I should probably ought to put the author's name. Again, that is Tommy, yes. I thought it was, but good. So there's that, and also that the second of the 2 TLS working group meetings is scheduled, but again, no agenda for that as yet, so I can't comment on that. So you find me definitely in one of those 2. And then last, on Wednesday, as is tradition, the IETF plenary will meet for normally at least for 2 hours from 5:30, and that will be a sort of report back from the IESG, the IAB, the LLC, various other bits, the IRTF, various other bits of the IETF to the community, and open mic sessions for each of those. Sometimes that can be quite dull. Other times it can be quite a lively, depending on what's current and if there's anything controversial. So we spent quite a long time, I think, in Bangkok talking about the merits of going to San Francisco relatively soon. And there was quite a lengthy exchange from the mic queue on that. I'm not sure if that's going to be a thing again, or maybe the forthcoming meeting in China might rear its head in Shenzhen next March.
As I recall that.
Okay, ploughing on to Thursday. I've got the IETF open meeting, but again, no agenda for that, so I can't comment on that. Then there's a fast notification for traffic engineering and load balancing BOF. And again, I pulled out some of the text from the sort of draft charter for that working group, so essentially setting out what problem it's trying to solve. And as with the other BOFs, this may lead to a working group being formed, or it may not. It depends how the discussion goes, and potentially it might come back on the agenda at the next meeting in Montreal. I think this is a new topic, so often they can sort of be discussed over two BOFs, over two meetings. There was nothing really else that jumped out at me on sessions 1 or 2 other than the IGF meeting and that BOF. Let me pause and see if anyone else wants to jump in with anything that you thought was especially worthwhile. And if so, just unmute and talk if you wish.
Hi, Andrew. IET Ops. I'm along with UCL doing 10 minutes on that. That's DNS related, so that might be of interest to people.
Okay, so that's Thursday session 2, second one down.
Yeah, I think so, unless there's another IET Ops somewhere.
Right. Okay. I don't think there is.
The agenda's up, so
yeah. I should say, by the way, a lot of these do have agendas. I know some of the ones I've highlighted don't, but so I'm just calling out the things that look interesting to me. But yeah, okay, that's helpful to know, Jim. That you give a presentation there. I'll take a look at that to see what it's covering. Thank you. Okay, and then just moving on Thursday, the MIMI working group is meeting, so that's more instant messaging interoperability. So that's trying to solve the problem of instant messaging applications being able to sort of transmit messages to each other, but retaining things like encryption and so on. But no agenda, so I can't share any details of that. You then got the Ops and Management Area open meeting, and I've highlighted a few of the things towards the top of the screen that they're covering. So interesting series of presentations, for example, on the API approach that China Telecom is taking, and towards better collaboration with other SDOs with a focus on ITUT expectations. So that could be a pretty interesting discussion. And then in session 4 later in the day, a proposed research group, sustainability and the internet proposed research group, talking about things like data centers and multi-use battery storage, subsea cables, carbon-aware networking, etc. And then the final BOF, protocol for transposed transactions over HTTP. And again, I sort of pulled out a pretty heavily summarized version of the problem statement that would-be working group is planning to look at, although again, it's early stages in that discussion. Okay, and then finally on Friday, sort of few bits and pieces. So there's the MapOG research group meeting, but with no agenda for Friday. Security area open meeting covering a few things such as you can see, CDNs, Anycast measurement tooling, etc. So a few interesting topics there. PEARG, Privacy Enhancements and Assessments Research Group, in session 2 is meeting, looking at covert web to app tracking, and other topics such as homomorphic encryption, which it'll be interesting to see what the sort of views are on that. And also DNS Ops has its second meeting on Friday, session 2, looking at them. There's a long list of topics, but in the 3 things I've pulled out from that: best practices for persistent references in DNS, multiple algorithm rules in DNSSEC, and authoritative DNS transport signaling. But there's a long list of other topics for the DNS Ops session. There was actually, I realised that, sorry, I skipped over. Apologies. Also Thursday lunchtime. Sorry, there's a sisters lunch. So that's the female and non-binary orientated sort of networking group are meeting for lunch, and also there's a host speaker series. So our local host is giving a presentation, as you can see, on quantum resistance cryptography. Sorry, I forgot that. And then finally for me, Friday, there's the farewell reception, 4:45 to 5:45 on Friday. Before I go into the side meetings, let me pause there, because I think there's been interesting comments in the chat about how to engage if it's the first time, and I think Suzanne's put some fantastic advice towards well, at the bottom of the chat there. It's worth highlighting the IETF note well applies. So that's, if you like, the sort of rules of engagement at the meetings, in terms of be kind to people and don't let anyone be rude or inappropriate to you either, because we do have occasional issues on that with a code of conduct covering it. And as Suzanne rightly sort of notes, most people are happy to see and indeed help interested new participants. So if anything doesn't make sense, feel free to ask someone. And as I say, join our WhatsApp group if you're new, and we can chat over stuff at any time as well. Okay, let me just quickly cover side meetings and I'll stop again. Side meetings are technically not part of the IETF official agenda, but there are people making use of a couple of rooms which have availability through the week. There is remote access available for these, and if the main rule, or 2 rules for the side meetings, again, the sort of code of conduct applies to them if they're side meetings, and also they're open to anyone that wants to go, subject to room capacity limits.
Just in terms of all the crime.
I've called out a couple of things in the sort of first half of the week. One on the Tuesday, you'll see the AI agent protocols side meeting, and if you go to the side meeting page and click on these, it gives you more details. And similarly, on Wednesday, the multi-stakeholder forum on internet standards deployment, which I think the prime movers behind that are the European Commission, who are wanting to gain engagement with sort of multi-stakeholders on the actual deployment of internet standards, and there's a sort of specific list of them that they are directly interested in, and they had a similar discussion again at RIPE, so be interested to see how that goes down at the IETF. And then also sort of in the sort of Thursday and Friday, again, a few more privacy control aware networks. Higher above that, so there's a zero trust protocol discussion, 8 till 9:30. You can see on the Thursday morning. So then in the same room, privacy control aware networks, and later on in the day, 7 till 8 p.m, the public interest technology group, which meets most, not quite, but nearly all IETF meeting to talk about privacy related sort of topics. And also in the other of the 2 side meeting rooms, as you say earlier in the day, a deployment initiative on authoritative dot and DNS over quick. And at the tail end of the day, the impact of AI agent on network infrastructure. So quite interesting topics. And then on the Friday, you got the EODIR, the Education and Outreach Directorate open meeting. So that's outreach from the IETF to other groups. And later in the morning, post-quantum DNSSEC research, which has been an ongoing topic with various papers sort of published in different places over the last little while. Now, clearly some of those clash with sort of working group and research group meetings, others don't. So the Zero Trust one on the Thursday doesn't. Others do. So do bear that in mind. If you like, this is another 2 parallel sessions potentially to also juggle with when you're determining what's of interest. And I can see Vittorio's just put that there's a side meeting on the Wednesday for the Settle meeting. Let me just go back. In the La Galleria, which is not, interestingly, one of the 2 normal side meeting rooms, which is probably Vittorio why it's not on the Trello board. So I've cut and pasted these 2 slides from. So okay, that's useful to note that there may well be other side meetings as well. And you can see Sarah has asked if you're interested in attending the ADOC meeting on Thursday morning about deploying encrypted DNS between recursives and authoritatives, and please let her know. It's quite helpful for it because although it's anyone can turn up, it's clearly useful for the organisers of those sessions if they got some idea who might turn up. It's quite handy. Okay, I'll see. Michael thought you also saw Settle from Trello. Okay, I'll have another look at that. This is what sort of showed up to me this lunchtime. Might be a glitch, and maybe something I missed. So I'll take a look at that. Okay, that's everything I was going to talk about from the IETF meeting. Let me just pause there. See if anyone's got any questions, other observations, anything else to say about that before I move on. And if so, raise your virtual hand or just unmute and talk or put something in the chat, whatever's easiest for you. Especially anyone that's potentially a sort of a fairly new participant and may have questions. Now would be a great time to ask. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone unmuting, so I'm assuming that you're happy. As I say, one other thing, just a reminder, if you want to join our WhatsApp group, mainly for organising social activities in the evenings, ping me a message separately and I'll happily add you to it. Right. Okay, let's just briefly move on to a couple other things. So stuff from the news headlines, which many of you would have had in your mailbox this morning. If you want me to add you to the mailing list, just drop me a line and I'll happily do that. There's an interesting piece from Nominet, just sort of describing some of the challenges it's identified in trying to detect and categorize and deal with DNS abuse. So it sort of just put a post out on that and is asking for feedback from interested stakeholders. So indirectly linked to that, coincidental, if I'm honest, timing wise, there's an interesting paper. It's a master's thesis published about the challenges of real-time detection, real-time DNS threat detection, and the author Tigran Oganessian, apologies Tigran for probably mispronouncing the name, has sort of put forward a proposal for a near real-time detection pipeline, developed sort of working with the DNS for EU project, which we discussed on this call last week, but inevitably using large language models, I think, for to support some of that detection activity. I thought that was quite interesting. And then piece published by Echo on DNSSEC and really what the barriers to adoption. And from a survey they conducted, roughly half, just under half of respondents still don't have plans for DNSSEC, mainly because they didn't see any particular incentive to do so, and there are cost barriers. No major surprises in that, so I just sort of pulled it out because it's almost in a sense the fact that there's been no noteworthy change over the last 12-24 months, I think, was worth noting. That there's still a sort of relative stalling of that, which probably won't come as a surprise to many of the people on this call. Other things which are probably, in the interest of time, I won't go through all of these. You might note the one at the bottom there, Quad9, publishing a daily update of their top 500 domains that they've seen through their resolver, which you can just access through GitHub using the link on the slide. AFNIC have sort of pulled out that it's about looking at the global domain name market last year, which sort of 1.5% growth, so still some growth, and they obviously give more details, specifically which bits of it. There was a nice piece actually from Domain Tools, third one down, where they do some work helping sort of with training for investigative journalists and researchers, and they explained how that had helped in the investigation of some possible disinformation operations by some journalists. So that was a nice piece that they did. And then bottom one on the screen, ICANN, we mentioned last week that the next meeting, ICANN 84, moved from Muscat to Dublin, and they've now published further information on that, including some FAQs relating to the arrangements for the new meeting. So I just wanted to draw that to your attention, because I know some of the people on this call will go there. And then a bunch of other stuff of interest, which we won't have time to go through, but other things that caught my eye in the press over the last week or so. Few deadlines to highlight, two for literally today. If you want to submit papers for the APNIC 60 meeting, that's a deadline of today for papers for that. And similarly, if you're a working group chair for the IETF, today is the deadline for revised working group agendas, although, as I noted, there's still even draft agendas lacking for some working groups at the moment. And then a week today is the early bird registration deadline for RIPE 91 in Bucharest in October. So if you want to save a little money on the cost of registration, do that before next Monday, and you'll do so. Okay, inevitably the next event coming up is IETF meeting, starting this Saturday with the hackathon, and then there's a slight gap in August, not much around, and then things kick off again with APNIC early September, the OALT meeting early October, and so on. October onwards, it tends to get busier again, certainly in the Northern Hemisphere. And a reminder, we don't have a call next week, but if you are in Madrid, let's meet up in person, especially but not limited to Monday. So other evenings are available to do that. So we could see people in person. Pause there. So again, thanks to our sponsors, DNS-related, for sponsoring the call. But let me stop talking at you and probably stop sharing the screen for a bit and just see anything else that anyone wants to raise on the call, or anything that, with hindsight, you wanted to go back to, ask a question about, or sort of chime in with another observation.
Useful tips for Madrid. So you found out about this. You need a Metro card? You need to buy one first because you can't use your credit card.
Ah, yes, there's been an exchange on the meeting mailing list that yeah, I think that's right. Well, you can't tap in on the Metro. I think you can buy the necessary stuff at the airport station, but you need to know that that's what you need to do. You can't just tap with your card. Or obviously Uber, etc., is also available. Other means of transport, should you desire. But yeah, good point. Anyone arriving at the airport planning to get the Metro, you do need to purchase the ticket prior to trying to get on, either or play the confused tourist. That's usually a good ruse, but I guess we've all been there, done that from time to time. Yeah, good shout. Forgot about that. Okay. Anything else anyone wants to raise? Doesn't have to be related to the IETF meeting, but anything else on your mind at the moment? Doesn't look like anyone's typing. Yeah, I see Victoria's given the better answer than I did, which is go to a vending machine and buy the generic red transport card plus the tickets you want with that first transaction. So it's a bit like, I think, from a UK sort of perspective, an Oyster card, as was. So you need to preload it with your credit. Okay, last chance for anyone to jump in. Nope. Okay, well, I hope that was useful. If anyone has any further thoughts on other things that could be of interest, feel free to drop me a line. I will update the slides. I'll send them out if I can tonight, but yeah, if there are further updates we can share those later on in the week. But hope that was useful and has given you a few pointers as to what you might want to do next week if you're planning to go. And as I say, if you want to join our WhatsApp group to sort of socialise in the evening, sort of send me a message, I'll add you to that, and we can sort of meet over a glass of hopefully something cold to help us just maintain a sensible body temperature throughout the week. Anyway, that's a good excuse for cold beer. Right, well, on that note, thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic week. I see Brett is poised to go back, hopefully, to the replay of whatever's gone on with the cricket. But have a fantastic week, and see many of you, no doubt, in Madrid next week. So good to catch up then. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.